is LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation, Cross Question, with Iain Dale.
It's 2 minutes past 8 on LBC. Welcome to Monday's Cross Question. Let me tell you who's on my panel. To my left, Angela Epstein, journalist and broadcaster. To her left, Dr. Luke Evans, Conservative Shadow Health Minister and MP for Hinckley and Bosworth, who's a former GP. To my right, Catherine Atkinson, who is Labour MP for Derby North. And next to her is Edward Morello, making his debut on the programme, Liberal Democrat MP for West Dorset, a very beautiful constituency. It's your turn to ask the questions. 0345 6060973. You can WhatsApp us on that number. You can text 84850 and watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Let's go to a text question from Scott in West Hampstead. The head of the CBI has warned the Chancellor not to inflict death by 1,000 taxes on British businesses when she unveils her budget on Wednesday. Do panel members agree with the CBI and other influential business leaders that the budget should not destroy business confidence and stifle economic growth? Well, I'd be surprised if any of you disagreed with that, but Catherine, let's start off with you.
I think it's clear that this government prioritises growth. It's what we need. I think it's absolutely. And when the last budget, we managed to deliver not only the £24 billion that the NHS does need, we were able to do so and also then see 5 interest rate cuts, inflation coming down. We saw wage growth faster, we saw in 10 months than we saw under the Conservatives in 10 years.
And growth?
And I think that especially considering what we see worldwide, I think that we had the fastest growth in the first half of this year in the G7. So absolutely, growth needs to be a priority. I want to continue to see the record investment that this government has been able to secure. Just this weekend, we saw our Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced the deal for Rolls-Royce, which is another £370 million in delivering airplane engines and its maintenance. I mean, those are the kind of good jobs that I want to see, not just for Derby, but for the whole country.
But in terms of business confidence, would you accept that the hike in national insurance for employers, that has stifled growth because companies have decided not to invest? There are lots of companies out there that have money to invest, but they're holding off.
With the increase in national insurance for some businesses rather than all, because that's not right. More than half either stayed the same or decreased, and 865,000 employers don't pay any national insurance at all.
Everybody over 5 employees, isn't it?
The important thing for me is that we've been able to secure. It's about ensuring that those who have the broadest shoulders also are able to pay, and small and medium-sized enterprises have been protected because they lift the allowance.
No, small enterprises under 5 employees have. You're absolutely right, but not over 5. They're all having to pay.
I think
more.
the 865,000 employers that are now paying no national insurance are pleased that we were able to lift that allowance. And I think that it is absolutely important that we were able to raise the money that we did to try and put right the damage that was done by years of austerity.
But business confidence is not high, is it? That's the problem.
What I would really like to know is where other parties would actually inflict
No, that's
cuts.
not what I asked you. I asked you about business confidence. I didn't ask you about the other parties.
I'm a Derby MP, and we have been able to see not only the investment in the nuclear submarine reactors that we build, we have seen investment in small modular reactors. We've also seen investment in civil aviation. The industrial strategy that this government has put in. Well, it's great. It's not just great for Derby, though planes, trains and submarines are a good plan.
All the surveys show that business confidence is at rock bottom. What's the reason for that?
I want to see the record growth, that the stability that this government has been able to deliver, because certainty is, I visit businesses all the time, and certainty is something that they say that they want, and were so sick of having the rug pulled from underneath them. by the previous government. So for me, absolutely growth is essential. But I think that the record investment that this government and our Prime Minister has been able to secure is essential for businesses large and small.
OK, Dr. Luke Evans.
Hi, and Catherine's done a very good job of tiptoeing around your questions and not really answering to them. The fact is that business confidence is down the same levels of where we had the pandemic, which is when we were in lockdown. That's literally where we're at the moment. And the reason? Because of the toxic concoction of what Labour have come in and done, with the increase in the national living wage, the increase in the national insurance contributions, the unemployment red tape that's coming in, all taken together, that squeezes these businesses, and that makes it really, really tough. So I do agree with the CBI in the question that we need to think very carefully about what Labour are going to do. And I think the problem is, talking about certainty, this has been one of the most uncertain budgets we've ever had, and we haven't even seen what's in the budget yet. So this notion of certainty is really difficult for businesses to get hold of because they're making decisions now.
Well, the fact is, you left the highest tax burden that we've had since the Second World War. That's not a record to be proud of. So can you can't expect Labour to have put all the wrongs right that you left 16 months ago.
Well, let's all not forget, I mentioned the pandemic, so that was 400 billion. If you remember when we first came in, when it was the economic crisis because of the banks, that was 158 billion. And it's because we dealt with a lot of these things, we were able to put the money into the economy. And actually, when we handed the economy over, we were the fastest growing economy in the G7, but we had inflation at 2%. We had decent employment.
Having been 11%.
Yeah, but across the world, across Europe, across America, that had all happened now. We're way an outlier at 3.6% compared to the G7 when it comes to inflation. And so the Labour Party can't even point to the international comparisons because we are way outside it from that side. So what's happened is we've lifted the bonnet from where we were, and we've seen that unemployment's gone up by 10%. So where is that certainty for the person who wants to get a job? Job vacancies are now at the lowest we've seen since the pandemic. And on top of that, we've seen, for the first time ever, the number of new businesses being registered bottom out. I mean, that's incredible that this is the environment we're creating for business people to try and generate growth, which at the end of the day was what the Chancellor and the Prime Minister said they were going to do.
Edward Morello from the Lib Dems.
Hi, Ian.
Hello. Welcome. So what's your answer to Scott's question about business confidence?
I agree with Scott wholeheartedly. Every business that I speak to is holding back on investment. They're holding back on hiring. The government has a growth agenda, but it's going...
They need to move to Derby. It's all great.
Well, apparently it's all absolutely fine there. As somebody who doesn't represent a industrial heartland and represents part of the vast swathes of rural Great Britain, where the hospitality sector is a vital part of our economy, agriculture is a vital part of our economy, 80% of our businesses are micro businesses. They are all saying we are under increased costs, both in terms of our staffing costs, our business costs, our input costs. They are not making investments, they are not growing, they are not hiring. And I think if the government is serious about growth, then you actually have to go after that 80% of businesses that are the employers, the hirers, and the backbone of this economy.
Angela.
Well, the OBR has downgraded its forecast for economic growth to...
Well, let's hope they're wrong as usual.
To 2029. OK, all right. I mean, you can chuck around statistics to make them fit whatever you want to say, but that's the most pessimistic since it was set up 15 years ago. And speaking as an ordinary person and not a member of Parliament... But
Angela, you are not ordinary.
I'm not a member of Parliament, but at least I have my health. But anyway, the fact is that we've had this pitch rolling going on, just as a microcosm of this dog and pony show in the run-up to the budget, in which all these theoretical policies have been bounced around, which has created the uncertainty that Luke has touched upon. This, to me, as somebody who has lots of friends who own small and medium businesses, my own husband does, this government seems to attack wealth and aspiration. And if you have no certainty and have no idea, and small and medium businesses are the engine room of the economy, they're the wealth creators, they create jobs, they create stability, they create the opportunity to invest. And if none of that is even slightly indicated in what Rachel Reeves has done in the last 18 months or so, then how can there be any confidence in business?
That's a fair point, isn't it, Catherine, about pitch rolling. I'd call it kite flying. And pitch rolling, you have policies that you want to sort of introduce, but they seem to roll back on a lot of them. I mean, as a Labour backbencher, and I've talked to quite a few of your colleagues about this, most of them are quite frustrated by it. This isn't the way to run a budget, is it?
Oh, well, I remember last year we saw massive amounts of speculation as well. We don't have much long to wait. We have got only a couple of days. But I'm surprised to hear the kind of criticisms of the rising in minimum wage, because certainly that, when we've got such a cost of living crisis as we inherited, it is important that people have a bit more money in their pockets to be able to spend in our restaurants and pubs and cafes. I think it's really important. That made a massive difference to 7,000 workers in my city to be able to have that extra £1,400 a year. And that's money that goes right back into the local economies.
Can I ask a question? At what point is there a policy decision that we stop looking over our shoulder and talking about what we inherited and we're here to fix the mess? You've been around for a while.
At least
now.
another 10 years.
Well, and I think as ordinary people, I'm like I say, I'm not an MP, but just talking from a kind of populist perspective, I think people are pig sick of hearing, this is what we inherited. We're clearing up the mess. These were the kind of macroeconomics that we were forced upon us when we came to office. Enough. This is the second budget.
But you
now.
can't blame them when the Conservatives did it to Labour after the financial crash. Think back to the winter of discontent. They were still using that in the 1987 election.
Okay, so we can back-reference lots of things in political history, but we're talking about the here and now. And that, to me, seems to be their riff on this the whole time. That is the refrain of this government.
Well, I don't think we can or should underestimate the massive damage, the long-standing damage that the years of austerity have given us. I mean, we left an NHS with record confidence, and it was absolutely trashed. So this government has had to, with no money, fix public services when they were on their knees. Now, I'm not a patient person. I'm probably one of the least patient people that you will meet. But I don't think that we can expect to see things turn around, particularly really quickly when we've got such an uncertain world. But I think that even though I would love to go further and faster, what I have seen, what we're already seeing, and some of is the tackling of the cost of living crisis. And I do think it's hugely important that we are seeing money spent on breakfast clubs and extending free school meals, about trying to ensure that we do bring the waiting list down in the NHS, which is crucial. And when we promised 2 million, delivered 5 million. These are tangible things that make a real difference to people's lives. And I think that we shouldn't underestimate how long that kind of long-standing damage takes to clear up.
I was just going to say, so in answer to your question, Angela, the Chancellor was very clear in an interview in November last year when she said this budget is blaming the Conservatives, the one she'd just done, and the next one is on us. I won't be coming back for tax raises. That was her words. Remember, she said that. And look where we're going to be now. And it's interesting talking about the health. You're absolutely right. There was big investment. If you think back to it, there was PFI investment. So £13 billion of investment into the NHS, £82 billion worth of cost for the taxpayer to pay. And now we're starting to see PFI Mark II come forward through the 10-year plan with these PPPs. And the government hasn't set out what that would look like, how we'll make sure we don't have those constraints on making sure we don't repeat the history of the past. So it is all connected, Angela, but I'm really worried about what this looks like, because at the end of the day, a bit like when you find a patient, you can deal with their circulation, you can deal with their broken leg, but if they're not breathing, if the airway, if the economy isn't working, you're not going to be able to fund all those things underneath it. And that's the big concern that we have. And that all comes from the growth from businesses that drive the chance for us to be wealthy.
Edward, do you find the Lib Dems are being squeezed out of this argument? Because you've got Zach Polanski from the Greens making quite a lot of headway in his sort of pro-wealth tax proposals. You've got the Conservatives and Reform attacking from the right. Where do you fit into this?
We're in the reasonable middle, Ian. We're trying to be what we call constructive opposition.
But that doesn't exist anymore. So you have to be on polar opposites.
No. Well, I mean, you certainly do if you're looking to get Daily Mail headlines. I totally appreciate that, or 4,000 likes on social media. Then it helps to be to lean into extremist rhetoric. We will carry on doing what Lib Dems have always done, which is we will support the government when they're doing it right. We will offer criticism when they're doing it wrong, and we will come forward with a slate of really good ideas that that the government can steal off us and not give us any thanks for, and that's absolutely fine, because if we end up with better policies and a better country, ultimately, as a proud patriot, I want to just act in the interest of my country. If we don't get the credit for it, then I can live with that.
Well,
and
I think
fall off a surfboard at the same time.
Hey, look, if we can do it and make people laugh at the same time, we all need a smile on our face. We're all hoping that the Chancellor will not be a Christmas Grinch, and we're here to spread joy as well as good ideas.
And what about the fact that Peter Kyle said that we're in a growth emergency? The Business Secretary says there's a growth emergency.
I think acknowledging that growth is absolutely essential is.
But he called it an emergency. An emergency suggests something that's happened, very recently and has happened as a conspiracy of explosive circumstances.
We had the fastest growth in the G7 for the first half of this year.
Yeah,
but if I may just... we had Jaguar Land Rover in September.
Right, one at a time, because listeners always complain when you all speak at the same time. So I'll use that as an excuse to go to a break. It's 8:17. 18 minutes past 8. As you've heard, we have quite a sparky panel tonight. We have Labour MP Catherine Atkinson, Dr. Luke Evans from the Conservatives, Edward Morello from the Liberal Democrats. It's a brilliant surname. It sounds like an ice cream.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Where does it come from?
I had to fight long and hard during the election to stop the leaflets from going out saying, put the cherry on top.
And Angela Epstein is a journalist and broadcaster. Right, let's go to...
With an unfortunate surname.
Well, actually, I hadn't thought of that before you said it, but you've now brought it to everyone's attention.
No
Angela.
relation.
No, thank goodness for that. Otherwise, we'd have to ask you to leave. Monesh is in Southall. Hello, Monesh.
I found the last comment rather amusing. Yeah, Ian, hello, welcome to the panel. I think my question is more directed to the Labour MP. Since the last budget, you've had higher taxes on the rich and wealthy and businesses, and so many thousands of people have left. And how does that do with growth? And if you want to improve growth in this budget by having higher taxes, I know you expect the people with the broader shoulders to bear the burden, but don't you get it? Don't you guys realise that the people with broad shoulders also have long, fast legs, and they're legging out of the country right now?
OK, Monesh, thank you for that. Now, the Business Secretary, Peter Kyle, has admitted today that entrepreneurs have been leaving the UK in their droves, his words, not mine, and that moves such as the abolition of non-dom tax status in the last year's budget have been partly to blame for this. I'm not going to come to you first, Catherine, because it's unfair, but everybody's going to ask this question, not just you. Edward, let's start with you.
Look, I think there's a broader issue here is about how we raise money in this economy, and I don't think going after people's personal wealth in any way, shape or form is the right answer. As already been mentioned, we have one of the highest rates of personal tax already, and in a cost of living crisis, increasing the tax burden, whether it be through freezing the tax bands or through any kind of stealth wealth tax, is just penalising the wrong people. I think the Liberal Democrats have been very clear. We want to go after the big banks who have doubled their profits over the last 5 years. We want to go after the social media giants that are spreading misinformation and disinformation on behalf of our enemies. We want to go after the online gambling firms that are reaping in massive profits off other people's misery. And there's a clear pathway there to raising vast sums of money. We think over 30 billion a year that will go to pay for essential services for people and bring down the cost of living crisis.
Anastasia wishes to point out that cherries and ice cream don't go together. just saying. Angela?
I just loathe the way that wealth has almost become a kind of dirty word in this country. I appreciate those with the broadest shoulders have a kind of a social responsibility, but equally they contribute the most into the public purse. And if you drive away the wealth creators, as I said before, then you don't have that degree of people who will contribute to the tax receipts. And the problem is that you're sort of almost disincentivized to make money now. The government is the suggestion they'll come after your pensions. They've already come after people who are at private schools, the farmers. Obviously, we had the U-turn on the winter fuel payments. But it seems that anything that cushions those who have, through dint of hard work, raised money and created business and earned a decent amount of salary and whatever, is fair game for the government. And it's almost like I appreciate the point about gambling because that unleashes these untold misery on people. But business, successful business, it's complete anathema to a successful economy to drive those people away because we punish them and penalise them for having the temerity to be successful.
Luke?
No, I think I agree with everything you said on that basis, Angela. And, we were told people won't leave, but we had 16,000 millionaires leave. And we've just had the latest figures that showed 257,000 Brits actually emigrated from the UK. Now, not all of them are going to be millionaires, clearly, but also you're getting a lot of young people deciding to go to the likes of Dubai to try and find better prospects. And we're right, the world is more mobile at this point in time. So people will make choices. And this is what Rachel Reeves doesn't quite seem to understand, is that if we can create an environment where people want to come and spend their money in a world that's more mobile, we're going to lose out. And I think that's what we're finding. We've lost more millionaires than anyone else except China. I mean, that's a staggering statistic.
And Russia, to be fair.
And Russia, from that. I'll take your word on that from that basis.
Catherine?
I think it is about fairness. It's about fairness, and we went into the election and had a manifesto commitment to reform the non-dom tax status, which we did. We committed to increasing passenger on private jets, which we did. And I do think that people want to see fair taxation. And we are seeing that coupled with record investment in this country, which I don't think that we should ignore. But under the Conservatives, we had Rishi Sunak brag about moving money away from deprived areas. I do want to see there being fairness.
Hang on, no. He was talking about and exactly what you're doing when it comes to the devolution, how we deal with organising, how we fund our local councils. It's to do with the formula and where you put the formula. For example, I represent a rural area, and one of the biggest problems we have is hidden poverty and sparsity. If you're a social worker or an occupational therapist trying to get out to someone, across my constituency to go from one side to another, it takes an hour. Now, that would just be counted on the formula as one visit. Whereas in a city, it's much easier to do so. So there's hidden pockets of poverty and sparsity that the government that you have are currently looking at undoing and reworking in a different way because your priorities have been around the cities. And so what we were trying to do under Rishi is to actually balance that out for all the reasons you've just said, to make it more equitable for those hidden pockets. So I won't have that being told around that it's just to be moved on that basis.
No, I think people saw it for themselves. He said that the systems, that Labour systems, meant that money was in deprived areas and that he was changing that. And I absolutely want to return to a system where we're actually seeing money given to where it's needed. I think it is.
Are you saying that rural constituencies don't need the money?
No, and I'm not defining it by rural or urban.
No,
I'm saying
but there are examples of, for example, where this. I can't remember what it's called, but the Towns Fund that the Conservatives dreamt up, £20 million is being spent on a theatre in Malvern, which is one of the more plush areas of that area of the country. And how can you justify spending £20 million on an already lovely theatre when you have, dare I say, areas of Derby that might well deserve it more?
And I'm really thrilled that we do have in one of the areas that I think had been completely abandoned by the Conservatives, we are seeing £20 million over 10 years, so £2 million a year for Chaddeston West. But what I think is really exciting,
else.
What's really exciting about that, though, is about doing politics differently, because it is the local community that's going to have a real say in how that money is spent.
Chris has put on my screen, it was the Levelling Up Fund that I'm talking about, which Boris Johnson and Michael Gove brought in.
Can I come back on that? Because a perfect example of the successful bid that we had in my constituency was for Twycross Zoo. So we got just shy of £20 million to build the next conservation and education centre to deal with climate change, but also conservation. That is forward-thinking for tourism.
But how's that levelling up?
I'm just explaining. So it's good for tourism because people will come to see the zoo. It's good for education. It's good for the environment and conservation on that basis, and provides for the economy as well. That's exactly what it should do. So if you were to, some of the other levelling up schemes with things like road changes, well, they are important, but it doesn't hit all those targets. So I think it's really important, and it's misgendering the whole debate on that basis.
I should say Rishi Sunak made that speech where I live in Tunbridge Wells, which no one would think should be levelled up. But, I mean, as Luke says, there are areas of poverty, even in rich towns, that you find it.
And so policies like having free breakfast clubs and extending free school meals and make a real difference in all parts of the country, and that is what this government has been doing.
Right, let's move on to another question. This is from Kieran in Earl's Court. We're obsessed by Rachel Reeves this evening. Spent the first half an hour of the programme talking about her. Is it sexist to call someone out for being dishonest about their work experience? Now, Keir Starmer has said Rachel Reeves has been on the receiving end of sexist rhetoric after she said last week that she is sick of people mansplaining how to be Chancellor to her. Other defenders of the Chancellor have argued that the Rachel from accounts references to questions about what she did while she was working for Halifax Bank of Scotland are sexist. Angela.
Well, I think there's a few things that you have to kind of unpack here. I think, first of all, when you have a role in public life, you have to accept the privilege and the pain that goes with that. And, it's just grist for newspapers and commentators to find taglines and sort of ways of describing people, nicknames, etc. I think the whole mansplaining thing, she talks about the fact that, it's almost she was being demeaned by people who are trying to, men presumably, who are trying to explain on her behalf. There are plenty of women, believe me, who don't hold a candle to what she does. And in fact, my beef with Rachel Reeves is she made great sort of noise about the fact that she was the first female Chancellor. Well, unfortunately, she's not going to be the greatest example to aspirant women. Yes, of course, she shows that women can reach high office, but equally, she's not fulfilled all that was demanded of that office.
Chance.
Okay, well, I'll give her 2 days. And I think the other thing that I really loathe is the weaponising of what's truly sexist and what's not. And this is a drum I've been banging for many years. We have to sort of divide between those really important things that relate to what's sexist, what's about subjugating the female role, and what is just about, equality for all. So when people complain there aren't women on banknotes, I don't care whether Jane Austen or Mickey Mouse is on a banknote. I just want there to be as many banknotes in my pocket as, say, yours, Ian, for doing the same job. And yet somehow we get the militant voices that spoil for arguments.
But the Rachel from accounts thing, you'd never hear anyone say Jeremy from accounts, would you?
Why not?
Well, because you just didn't.
Why not? But just, okay.
You do get nicknames. We had the Spreadsheet Chancellor, didn't we?
What's yours?
So, what's mine?
Spreadsheet Phil.
I'm not allowed to say on air. Spreadsheet Phil, exactly right. So, it is there by the role you take on. So I think this is a defence that's been put up when she has nothing else to say. And it's just because she's doing a bad job in my eyes as a Chancellor and many people across the country. It's nothing to do with being sex or anything else like that. If that was the case, Liz Truss would be under the same bus on this basis.
Well, she was elected.
Exactly. There we go. So there's the argument solved.
Okay, Catherine.
Rachel Reeves was an economist with the Bank of England. I do think that she faces a lot of vile, frankly, on social media, and I don't think we can avoid the fact that I do think that women politicians do tend to get a lot of really horrific things online, and often more so than male counterparts. But I think Rachel Reeves is perfectly able to stand up for herself, and I think she does so time and time again.
Edward?
I'll be honest, Ian, as a straight white middle-class male, I can't think of anyone less well-placed to talk about the lived experience of any woman in a professional life.
Straight white male of the Liberal Democrats, is it? There's still such a thing?
Yeah, I think that's a shame.
I think we should call out sexism wherever we see it. I will disagree with Angela. I think actually, the point about accepting it in public life, unfortunately, we have normalised toxic rhetoric in British public debate and in British politics, and we should call it out wherever we see it. But I think when it comes to the Chancellor, she'll be judged on her results, not least, I imagine, by the Prime Minister.
But so you're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater there, because we have a fine tradition in this country of holding those in power to account through humour.
Absolutely.
Yes Minister was built or was predicated on that whole
as
role.
As long as there have been newspapers, there have been cartoon strips
exactly.
taking the piss out of people.
And I think
fine.
You have to draw a line between what is absolute, believe me, as a woman and on the receiving end of a lot of garbage on Twitter and everything, although I accept it because, you put yourself out there as a newspaper writer, then you get it. But there's a big difference between some of the really heinous, awful things and the jokes. There were question marks about her CV. There have been question marks about her competency as an economist, and she's Chancellor. So that's going to attract comic sort of taglines about who she is. And that's not sexist.
I wasn't calling it sexist. What I was saying is that she is best placed to talk to her experience and how it's made her feel. And, ultimately it is through the prism of the receiver. If she's seeing it as something that is deliberately abusive or targeting, then she's okay to call that out.
I do think you do need to have a thick skin in politics. But certainly when I was standing at a previous election, I was told by a Conservative councillor I'd be far too busy changing nappies to ever be a member of Parliament. Now, I don't think that a man would face that kind of
But you're doing what I just said. You're conflating something which is so manifestly sexist because it's conspiring with this whole idea of the classic matriarchal image and something which is Rachel from accounts. Because basically the joke is she's supposed to be Chancellor and that she seems to have entry-level, O-level grade understanding of economics.
Well, a friend of mine was asked a similar question to you. This was in a Conservative selection. And she was asked, Mrs. Ricks, what will your husband do for sex while you're an MP? And she said, isn't the real question what I will do for sex when I'm an MP? And on that bombshell, let's get the news headlines at 8:34 with Matt Hewitt.
Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:36 on LBC. Let me reintroduce my panel. Catherine Atkinson is Labour MP for Derby North. Dr. Luke Evans, Conservative Shadow Health Minister and MP for Hinckley and Bosworth. Edward Morello is Liberal Democrat MP for West Dorset. And Angela Epstein is journalist and broadcaster. Martin in Doncaster is on the line. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Ian and panel. The question is should Nigel Farage open an investigation into reform on its links to Russia after Mr Gill's 10.5-year sentence for taking Russian bribes?
Right. Your line broke up there, so I'm going to repeat the question. Should Nigel Farage open an investigation into Reform's potential ties to Russia after Nathan Gill's sentencing? Now, Nathan Gill was formerly Reform's leader in Wales, and before that was an MEP for the predecessor party, the Brexit Party. And on Friday, he was jailed for 10.5 years for having accepted bribes of around £40,000 in return for making pro-Russia statements in the European Parliament and during media interviews. Edward.
I'm not sure Nigel Farage is the best placed person to do the investigation into whether or not Reform, there are wider problems within Reform. I think that there is definitely a need for further investigation into the Brexit Party and the UKIP Party and the things that they said when as MEPs. But I think more broadly there is an issue about how Russian, especially misinformation and disinformation, is being repeated by British politicians. It is being normalised by certainly Nigel Farage and echoing similar sentiments in the White House as well. I think there is a lack of understanding amongst the British public about the extent to which that sort of rhetoric, that toxic and misleading rhetoric, has permeated into public discussion in the UK, whether it be on social media or in Westminster. And I think the government should absolutely be looking into that.
Catherine.
Well, I would certainly like to see a stronger response from Nigel Farage over what we have seen, because I think it's an absolute disgrace. But I would also like to see some real honesty about what we're seeing in local government by Reform as well. They went into the local elections.
Let's stick to
well,
this.
but I think it's important because absolutely it's an utter disgrace what we saw, and I don't think that we've seen a strong enough position from Nigel Farage about his former colleague.
To be fair, he has unreservedly condemned him. I mean, I'm not sure what you want him to say.
Well, I think
been kicked out of the party. He says this is not acceptable behaviour. What else would you like him to do?
I think that it seems to have been hugely hesitant, his comments in relation to the completely unprovoked attack by Russia on Ukraine. I don't think that we are getting the criticism that we have seen of what Russia has done and what his former colleague has done. And I absolutely think that he should be clearer.
Do you agree with Edward? There should be a wider investigation into Russian influence in UK politics. I mean, conducted independently. So, I mean, I completely accept it's not always a good idea for a party to investigate itself.
I take the point in terms of investigating itself, but I do think that there is a responsibility to be absolutely clear and to be, and I think he should be concerned not just about his former colleague, but about the rhetoric that we see across reform. It's just not good enough.
Can I just say, we've had in the last few months, we've obviously got the Nathan Girl story, we've got the collapse investigation into staffers spying on behalf of China. We've got the previous Russian spying scandal. We've got LinkedIn, Chinese spies pretending to be LinkedIn contacts trying to contact MPs. There is obviously a concerted effort to integrate itself into our political system and our public debate. And I think the government stepping in and doing an independent investigation is about not just preserving our political system, but actually informing the British public about the extent to which the misinformation and disinformation that our enemies are peddling is being repeated and permeating our public discourse. And until we start educating the public, they're going to keep falling for these lies, these Putin's stories, Putin's narrative around things like Ukraine and around some of the social divisions in our society that are being deliberately highlighted and exaggerated by our enemies.
It seems extraordinary that anybody, let alone a leader of a political party, could fall for this. And particularly, I mean, £40,000. I mean, you're selling yourself quite cheaply to do that. I would have thought, Angela.
I don't know. In my part of Manchester, it goes quite a long way. 40 grand. No, I'm going to do something outrageous and be specific to the question, if that's okay.
If you must.
Martin. Yeah, there should be an investigation. I don't think it should be. Look, Nigel Farage is a Marmite politician. We can see that the other major parties are hemorrhaging voters from the right and the left, because he's saying things that certain demographics want to hear. And we have to decide whether we use what's happened with Nathan Gill as a stick to beat Farage with, or whether we just look at the issue in hand here, which was an egregious event or series of events, and for which he has now been sent to jail. And we have to see how it happened. And there has to be greater scrutiny of those who claim public office. But what you also have to look at is, do you define your leader by those who are also part of the members of your party? I mean, Keir Starmer, for example, has called Jeremy Corbyn a friend in the past. He was willing to serve twice during leadership contests in Corbyn's cabinet had he won, and we know the kind of leader Jeremy Corbyn was.
He wasn't taking £40,000 in bribes from the Russian government.
No, okay, so you respectfully deliberately missing the point. What I'm saying is, do we make a character assessment of a leader by dint of those who serve amongst his party?
Well, it's one factor, isn't it?
Pardon?
It's
yeah. So
factor.
I'm asking the question. So either we have to say, are we using this as a kind of snapshot to take a greater view of Nigel Farage and what his party stands for, or do we answer specifically the question and say, yes, there must be some scrutiny here? It would be useful if it was a cross-party scrutiny, because we want to mark their own homework and see what it unearths.
Luke?
Martin, yes.
Yep.
I think Nigel should look into it and do a review into his own party. I think that would be very useful. It shows leadership of making sure there's a big problem. If you want me to expand into the wider position as well, I think there needs to be a lesson learned for all politicians about how someone became so vulnerable on that point. I don't know the details, and that's quite scary to think as an MP. I don't know how they were approached, and I have a real concern that actually across politics, all MPs in Parliament, we aren't given the information as much as we need to. I remember sitting vividly a couple of years ago in one of the security briefings and asked, we were told to be vigilant. And I said, well, great, what are we looking for? Well, you need to watch out for things that aren't quite right. I said, great, well, how often does that happen? Oh, well, we can't tell you. But what do you mean you can't tell me? So you can't tell me what I'm looking for, and you can't tell me what to, how often it happens. It's a bit like me saying, well, Ian, you need to watch out for cancer, but I'm not going to tell you what the symptoms are, and I'm not going to tell you how common it is. You'd say, well, how does that work? I worry about the culture we have in
But unless my memory's failing me, you were approached by. I mean, are we allowed? Is this a case?
No, it's still, so there is a court case going on, but yes, let me explain from that side.
Well, if you can do it without prejudicing the case.
No, so I was attempted to be picked up in a honey trap scandal. I was had unsolicited WhatsApp messages come through to me, and there is a gentleman who's being in going up in front of court. Actually, he's a Labour councillor, ex-Labour councillor. And yeah, at the time I was working in for Grant Shapps as the defence secretary. Yes, so I reported it and put it out to raise it up.
Well, let's not go any further into that, because
but what I mean
there
is,
is a court case.
I've been right in the centre, and I don't think that we collectively as democracy realise just how much of a threat we are under.
Were you concerned to see your party chairman, Kevin Hollinrick, comparing the Reform UK logo to the Nazis' Golden Party badge on social media last night?
Yes, I think there are better things we can focus on, like the fact that there's a convicted Russian infiltrator in the Reform. I think that's far more important than what a badge looks like.
But I mean, why would he do that? Because he then deleted it, but then tweeted again and did a link to whatever website it was on. It was just unbelievable for a party chairman to do.
I didn't know that, and I guess. Is it Godwin's law, is it?
Yeah.
When you resort to calling someone a Nazi online, then you're probably losing the argument. I think we could focus much more on the fact that their leader's been sent to jail for spying for the Russians or whatever it was. I think that's far more important.
Right, more questions to our panel in just a few moments' time. You're listening to LBC. It's Cross Question at 8:46.
Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:48, Catherine Atkinson, Dr. Luke Evans, Edward Morello and Angela Epstein with us. Phil is on the line in Liverpool. Phil, hi.
Hi, good evening. My reason for the call and the question to the panel would be, is why, when this country is in such a financial state, have we committed to wasting at least £12 billion per year fighting a war that was largely provoked by NATO and planned by NATO. All the evidence is there to be seen. When Ukraine's not in the EU, it's not a member of NATO. And as I can understand it from the research which is widely available, this war was provoked by NATO, going far as back as 2008.
If this were a proper phone-in and not cross-question, I would be ripping you a new one at the moment, Phil, but I'll let my panel do that. Luke?
Is Phil getting more or less than 40 grand? I don't know. Phil, the reason this matters so much is because Russia has taken over a sovereign country. That is something we all need to take very, very seriously, because it threatens all the world that we fought for the last 100 years. And that's why both the last government and this government are standing steadfast by Ukraine, because otherwise we give in to a bully. And if we give in to a bully, the whole deck of cards that we've set up could fall down. And there were many other operators who would show strength rather than solidarity with one another to control what we feel is the right way to conduct the freedoms in this world. And that's what people in the First World War and the Second World War fought for, and is under threat at the moment. So that's why I think it's really important that you've heard a loud and clear message from all parties in Parliament saying it's the right thing to do to support Ukraine.
Now, there are reports this evening that President Zelensky could travel to Washington later this week to negotiate the remaining sticking points in the American negotiated peace plan with Donald Trump. When we say American negotiated peace plan, I think what we actually mean is the one that Vladimir Putin dictated to Donald Trump. Angela?
Yeah, how you're spelling Donbass, you can imagine him on the phone. I mean, look, I agree with what Luke said. You know, we are a civilised Western country. We cannot have bullies like Putin marching into a sovereign nation and saying, this is the land that I want and I'm going to grab it. But equally, I do understand, is it Phil, the caller's concern, ringing from one of my favourite cities, Liverpool. The caller's concern, our defence spending is only going to increase to 2.5% of GDP by April 2027. We've barely got enough nuts and bolts to defend our own country. So on practical terms, it is difficult. I mean, we haven't got boots on the ground. We're not sending in troops from the UK, but we are providing some of the hardware. But we do have a kind of ethical consideration. I'm hoping that, this peace deal, for all that you've said, Ian, about it being basically Trump and Putin carving up Ukraine, that it will produce something that won't humiliate Zelensky, that will provide some kind of just and lasting peace. These are the new words that were entered in today that weren't in Friday's document. But equally, you have to think of the Ukrainians and what they've suffered, all the blood that's been spilt, what those compromises, what that will do for the internal cohesion of Ukraine, if all those people that have died, what land will be handed back. It is. Unfortunately, I'm very nuanced on this, Phil, because I'm with Luke that ethically this is what we should do. Practically, it's getting harder to defend.
Catherine?
I think Phil has managed to unify your panel this evening, because I agree with Luke as well. I think Ukrainian security is European security, is our security. And if Putin is allowed to invade in an unprovoked attack in the way that he did, then no one will be safe. I think at every turn, though, Putin has underestimated the Ukraine. I think, and he's underestimated the commitment of Ukraine's friends and allies.
Edward?
I think when Philip says that all of the evidence points at NATO causing the war, it speaks to exactly the point I was making earlier about the corrupting influence of Russian misinformation and disinformation on public discourse. That is factually incorrect. It was Russia that invaded Crimea. It was Russia that invaded the Donbass and the other regions. It is Russia who has always been the perpetrator of this war and is causing mass atrocities. To Phil's point about the money, let's be very clear. The cost of fighting Russia in Ukraine is a fraction of the cost we will have to incur if we have to fight Russia anywhere else. It is a tiny, tiny fraction. We are better off fighting and defeating Russia in Ukraine than we are anywhere else in Europe or in the UK. And we are already seeing Russia reaching into other territories with overflights of drones, with the firebomb attacks on Ukrainian drone suppliers in the UK. We are seeing Russia acting elsewhere in Europe. And if we don't act to defeat them in Ukraine, we will fight them somewhere else.
I think we should give Phil a right of reply. Go ahead, Phil.
No, I think the panel have, unfortunately, have declared what I expected them to. But to imagine that Russia is expanding before this NATO obsession with Ukraine and Georgia is ignoring the facts. World experts, by the way, not Russian misinformation, like John Mearsheimer, Jeffrey Sachs, lots and lots of academics who know the history, who were involved in the history of this, have absolutely come out and said this is a proxy war. It was
But Putin himself,
if NATO hadn't
Phil,
expanded towards Russia, there would be no war.
Well, you say NATO expanded towards Russia. Can you name me a single nation that didn't voluntarily sign up to NATO? Why do you think all Eastern European nations did after the Cold War, after the Berlin Wall came down? Because they feared an expansionist Russia. And you've got President Putin, who has made no secret of the fact that he would like to expand Russia's borders back to their Soviet levels.
Oh, no, I disagree.
Well, he said it.
I don't think you're quoting the facts. Just stick with me, because in terms of disinformation, I mean, the UK has been running a disinformation service for donkey's years. Even in the EU Parliament, they've had to discuss the Operation Integrity about the UK doing Russian disinformation.
What on earth are you talking about? The only disinformation was from Russia Today, and luckily we've closed that down, just as I'm done to you. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to a text question from Louis in Camden. How do we make men take their own health more seriously? Now, the former Prime Minister David Cameron has revealed that he's been treated for prostate cancer. He went to the doctor when urged to by his wife Samantha, who heard a doctor talking about the condition on the radio. I think actually it was Nick Jones, who owns Soho House, was talking about it. Well, Luke, you're a former GP. Do you still practice?
No, I don't, but all my family do. My wife, my brothers, my father was a GP.
So when you were a GP, did you find it quite frustrating that men did not take take their health as seriously as they should, particularly in areas like this.
They present in a different way, and I think that's a really important side. So the last government, recognised that women have particular problems and put in a women's health strategy and a women's minister. But equally, if that argument is true, then men present in a different way and have different needs, and men and boys are having that. So we've got a men and boys health strategy, which is a good start. But in essence, yes, men tend to want to solve a problem, and you have to be able to give men the ability to try and solve that problem, but also identifying that problem in the first place is usually from their partner, actually. They're the ones who sort of say, have you thought about this? Just like David Cameron had that. So it's trying to get into a space where you can have that conversation so that men feel comfortable about going in and solving a problem. And that's a really difficult space that society hasn't quite got right yet.
And is it, as David Cameron said, it's because the prostate is associated with sort of sexual things, and I mean, basically it's a bit yucky. You don't particularly want Dr. Luke Evans, GP, sticking his finger up your butt.
Well, that's part of it, but also I think part of it is also, not personally on that basis, but more generally, part of it is also time and not realising it. It's also a British mentality not to talk about these things. So we have to change the culture to say that it's okay to raise these issues up. But often life gets in the way, and people, and particularly men, go, well, it's a problem. I don't really want to ignore it. It could be something sinister. So that's almost why they ignore it and leave it and leave it and leave it and just wait and see if it gets worse. And that's, again, a classic British mentality. So trying to encourage people with opportunistic ability to go in, have those conversations, spot it, think about it. And it's that visibility of just thinking about it, nagging them almost to make that decision, not in a patronising way, but an awareness way, which is why you see things in toilets and things like that to say, have you thought about this? It's a problem.
Edward.
I agree with Luke's point. I mean, increasing routine screening for both prostate but also breast cancer as well is key. I have BRCA2, which means I have a increased chance of getting prostate cancer. It is the most common cause of cancer for men. So, there's definitely an education element to this, but there's absolutely, Luke is right. It's also about normalising men talking about their health issues, whether it be physical health or mental health.
Catherine.
It is so important that we're talking about this, especially as 1 in 8 men will get prostate cancer. I think most of us will know someone who we love with prostate cancer, and someone I know, her father was diagnosed because he got it checked out because he heard people talking about it on LBC. Yeah. So talking about it literally saves lives. And I think it's a huge step forward that last week we saw a men's health strategy and funding behind it as well, because we do need to go further and faster.
The last time we did a phone-in on it, about 6 months afterwards, I got 3 emails from 3 separate men that said if I hadn't been listening to your programme, I would be dead now.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Amazing.
I think women are very good at sharing things with each other. They'll talk in the office about their menopausal symptoms or about whatever it is, aches and pains. They'll show bits and pieces to each other. Men, just as a rule of thumb, don't tend to do that with their friends.
No, we don't.
They really don't.
They don't show our bits to each other.
No, they don't. I've sat in, showbiz moment. I've sat in the nail salon and somebody said, I think I've got a problem with my cesarean scar. Women do those kinds of things, and I think men have to learn
I'm not
to
a woman.
Yeah. Well, okay. Pros and cons, love. And it comes, we're used to that. We have to kind of, take the wheel out of the mud with men.
I think there is also, and I mean this really seriously, that I've mentioned this story to 2 or 3 women today, and each of them have found it slightly amusing in some way. And I'm thinking, this is so different. If I was to ever make some sort of facetious remark about breast cancer, I would immediately be cancelled. And yet, for some reason, sort of men's prostates are a subject of amusement for some people.
I think we often hear also that prostate cancer, if it's caught early, you live with it rather than die from it, and therefore it's seen as a kind of, it's a contradiction in terms of sort of almost a benign form of cancer. Whereas, my medical friend here will tell you better than me, if it starts to spread through the bowel or whatever, then it becomes very serious.
Well, we're going to be talking about this in the next hour on LBC, so do stay tuned. We'd like your experiences of prostate cancer. But our fun question, which we have to finish with, was from Zoe in Leeds. Brian May says he's keen to do an ABBA hologram-style AI show of Queen, so we get to see Freddie Mercury perform, sort of. Who else deserves to be revived in AI hologram form, and why? Luke.
Oh, you came to me first. He's not dead, but I think it'd be great for Parliament to have David Attenborough commentating on Parliament. I just think that would be really funny to see him being able to comment on what goes on in the chamber. Someone who is dead, the Queen. I'd love to see the Queen back. I have a soft spot for her.
Well, there's so many Instagram reels now. Do you all see these?
Yes.
The Queen sort of doing like West Indian voices and things. I mean, they are absolutely
Give the public
hilarious.
what they want.
Angela?
I'm a massive Beatles fan, and I've seen loads of like bootleg type tribute bands. Bootleg Beatles are brilliant, but I would love to see the Beatles in hologram form the way the ABBA Voyage thing has been done. I went to see it. It's brilliant. I would love to see them in like 64, 65, a young, very beautiful Paul McCartney, who to me was absolutely gorgeous. And I just want to sit there and scream. I'd love to know what that Beatlemania was like.
I've never got the bit. I think I was a bit too late for the Beatles. I've never
Me too.
really thought. Well, I was about to say, Catherine.
So I think I would love to be able to kind of see the comedy and have the laughs that we saw, especially when I was kind of growing up with Robin Williams. And also, though, someone who I think many people will have said it was just so incredibly sad when you see such a light that then dies by suicide. I think when we're talking about men's physical health, I think it's so important that we remember that actually we need more men to be talking about their mental health as well.
Which we do a lot on the programme. In fact, I think we did it last week. Edward?
For dead, I'd go with Elvis, undoubtedly. I think that would be great to see. I don't think we need AI, but we should have a conversation about bringing back Mr. Blobby. He's definitely missing
You were
from
doing so well on your debut until that answer. Thank you all very much indeed for coming on the show tonight. If you missed any of the show, you can catch up on the Cross Question podcast. On tomorrow's panel, we have the British Chambers of Commerce Chief Executive Siobhan Haviland, former Scottish Labour Party leader Kezia Dugdale, Conservative MP and former Net Zero Minister Graham Stewart, and the Sunday Telegraph's political editor Camilla Turner.